A lot of people tend to struggle with consuming large amounts of food. Overeating is often a way to repress emotions of fear and anxiety, or may occur when a positive event has happened. Addiction to food is a serious problem, and there are multiple health problems associated with overeating and eating unhealthy. But how can you overcome your addiction to food? In this video, I will give you tips to help you better your eating habits. Cut sugary foods out of your diet completely. Why do sugary foods make you addicted to them? Sugary food is in abundance and readily available nowadays. This wasn't always the case, and so consuming large amounts of sugar each day definitely has a negative impact on your health. Because sugar repeatedly activates the brain's reward system, your brain will start adapting to the frequent stimulation. You will need to keep eating the same amount of sugary foods to keep your dopamine levels high, making you dependent on those sugary foods. More and more sugar will be needed to gain the same amount of pleasure. It is similar to tolerance when using drugs, and eating sugar frequently will lead to more and more consumption. In short, eating sugary foods will definitely lead to craving more of the same. Among weight gain, dental problems and metabolic disorders like diabetes, there are lots of health risks involved with eating sugary foods. Cut sugary foods and sugary additives out of your diet to reduce the craving of these types of foods and reduce all the health risks associated with sugar consumption. If you feel you cannot cut it out cold turkey, at least try to scale down the consumption of sugary foods and additives and aim for removing them completely. This is one step in the way of overcoming food addiction. Remove processed foods from your diet completely. Why do we crave processed foods, and why is it bad for you? Like sugary foods, processed foods are engineered for overconsumption. When food manufacturers want people to buy their products, it has to taste good. There's a lot of competition and a lot of supply when it comes to processed foods, and food in general. Companies spend a lot of money on making the food as desirable as possible. The processed foods that have been manufactured, like sugary foods, are so incredibly rewarding to our brain that it's more stimulating than anything we might come across in nature. Because we eat processed foods which are disproportionately rewarding, we dismantle our brakes which protect us from overconsumption. Processed foods are generally full of refined carbohydrates. Like sugar itself, refined carbohydrates are rapidly broken down in the intestines and lead to big spikes in blood sugar and insulin levels. When these blood sugar levels have settled down, this will lead you to crave carbs again, and so the cycle continues. When you keep consuming these foods and make no efforts to cut them out of your diet, you will keep craving these foods because the cycle of eating and craving will repeat itself. A step in the right direction to overcoming addiction to food is replacing the processed junk foods with whole, single ingredients and natural foods. Remove trigger foods from your diet and your house. What are trigger foods? Typically, trigger foods are foods that trigger you to crave and eat them more and more. You know your own trigger foods, but trigger foods for people generally are candy, salty snacks, sweet drinks, fried foods and baked treats. When people start eating these trigger foods, generally they will want to eat them more and more because of the reasons we just looked at. When you start removing these foods, you will definitely be less tempted to overconsume other foods, and thus this will be a good way to overcome food addiction. It is a good idea to not even have these foods near you, and so you shouldn't even have them in your house. This will not tempt you to keep thinking about it and eventually eat it. Try to remind yourself that when you do choose to eat these foods, the cycle of craving more of the same, bad food will keep repeating itself. Although it may be hard to completely quit them in the beginning, it will definitely be easier over time, and you will be well on your way to overcome food addiction. Start intermittent fasting to overcome food addiction. Intermittent fasting has been shown to increase weight loss, increase energy, lower bad cholesterol, repair cells, and help protect against diabetes. But how does this exactly help with overcoming food addiction? Intermittent fasting is a huge opportunity to decrease the dependence you have on food, and will definitely reduce the cravings you have. I personally have been doing intermittent fasting for years now and I feel loads better. Don't think about food as often and generally don't give in to cravings at all anymore. Intermittent fasting doesn't pertain to what foods you eat, but when you eat them. You can utilize intermittent fasting with any diet that's out there. It's just about eating it in a certain time window. This habit forces you to face your food addictions and experience how bad your impulse to eat food really is. This does not mean that intermittent fasting is about suffering hunger for the period of time that you are doing it. When you start intermittent fasting, you might feel a few hunger pangs that will urge you to gratify that impulse and start eating. But you will find the longer you are into the fasting window, the feeling of hunger will dissipate and you will have more energy. The energy that is normally used to constantly digest food has been freed, so you can spend it on something else. I will now give you instructions on how to start intermittent fasting yourself, so you can start to better your relationship with food and decrease food cravings. First off, you have to decide which eating window you will go for. Eating windows are a small window of, let's say, 6 hours in which you eat. Outside of that window, you don't eat anything, but you can drink black coffee, tea, and water. So again, you eat everything you eat inside the eating window. You eat nothing outside of the eating window. The most common and accessible is the 16-8 eating window, where you have an eating window of 8 hours and a fasting window of 16 hours. The eating window can be anywhere in the day, but generally people's eating window is at noon and in the evening. For example, I try to maintain a 19-5 intermittent fasting pattern. My eating window is from 3 o'clock until 8 o'clock, just because it is my personal preference. Your times can differ and that is completely fine, but the general rule is that you skip your breakfast, and so you don't eat anything in the morning. Again, you can drink black coffee, tea and water, but nothing that contains any macronutrients. In the beginning it may be hard, but this will definitely change your relationship with food for the better, and give you all the benefits that come with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting has greatly improved my relationship with food and has slowly and steadily removed my cravings and addiction for food. You will overcome your food addiction eventually and have a better relationship with food if you apply the tips that I gave you in this video. If you have any more questions, I would love to hear them in the comments below. If you got some value out of this video, please like, and if you want more videos like these, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.